this is a whole new world for a lot of people who haven't had any political or elected experience before. I think they need to be taught how to fill out the statement of substantial interest to make sure they don't accidentally forget something, because people may assume something shouldn't be on there when it should be. And they should have a class on, and whether it's the party leadership, each party might do it separately or together, might be in a bipartisan way so everyone gets the same instructions. One where the bright line rules are, you can't do this, and then a discussion about what's not only ethical, even though it may be permitted, just maybe an open discussion about that, and also a little common sense about how it will appear to the public. Some things that might follow the rules. Being a lawyer myself, I've seen this. You can follow the rules and it still doesn't look good. And to make sure people seriously consider that. It's not just another boring lecture where they can fall asleep and take notes and check their BlackBerries.
I think finding a mentor when you go through the legislative process is a smart thing to do. You may decide halfway down the road that you've picked the wrong one and need to align yourself with people that more nearly think like you do, but you really need somebody to help you figure it out. And that's the best advice that anybody could give you. The second best piece of advice is don't start signing on to a lot of bills until you understand exactly what the consequences are. One of the first things that happens is people start passing around pieces of legislation and say, oh, just sign on this. This will be good for you. Well, you better know what your district is, and you better know what the unintended consequences of that legislation are. So I think stay in your seat, don't speak a lot, listen, don't sign on to lots of bills, and really understand the political process before you start venturing out.
In terms of being new legislators, there's one recommendation people make, and I think it's not a bad one, which is sort of this decision. Do you want to maybe become an expert on one thing? That doesn't mean you don't know anything about other things, but the legislature needs legislators who are experts in some things. And so possibly pick a policy area, pick a subject, and then really dive into it and research it and become an expert. I think that can be very valuable. And other legislators will recognize that right off the bat. Maybe, and it may not necessarily be something you've done, but I think that can be very valuable. The other thing is, coming from a political scientist, is at some point a legislator may want to think, what kind of legislator am I or do I want to be? What I mean by that is political scientists divide legislators into three roles. One is a trustee, in which the legislator trusts his or her own judgment to make decisions. The other is a delegate, where the legislator simply says, well, in my district they want this, so that's how I vote. And then the other is called a politico, who sort of divides the two and goes from issue to issue. Amazingly, maybe not amazingly, a lot of legislators may go 2, 4, 8 years, where if you ask them, what are you, they might say, well, I'm not sure. Now, if we look at their voting record, we could probably tell you exactly what they are. But I think it's good for the legislators to know what they are, and then it makes them at least evaluate what it is exactly they're doing. And what it is it makes them evaluate the sometimes tension between what their district may want versus what's good for the entire state. And in the end, that's going to be the battle. The most difficult thing for the legislature is there's going to be strong interests from districts or even interest groups, but they may not necessarily be good for the entire state. And sometimes a legislator who, for example, is a trustee might have to go back to his or her district and explain that, here, I had to vote that way, but these are the reasons why.
Okay. One thing I learned when I was in the House, I say I learned it, I adopted that as my way of looking at things. There's no way you can know all you need to know about every issue that comes before you. I mean, when you look at 1,000 issues, 1,000 bills in 1 year, you can't. You cannot know very much about a lot of different issues. So what I learned to do, and I mean, they come at you real fast, and you have to vote on them, one way or the other. Over there, you push a green light or a red light. Two things I learned. One, if you absolutely don't know and you're questioned, vote no. That's kind of a mantra that goes around.
That's good advice.
But the other one, and I think more useful one, is to pay attention to somebody that, and find somebody that you can trust. One of the old time legislators that you can trust, and you're of a like philosophy mainly, and watch how they vote, and just vote with them. You have to do that. That sounds like a weak give up position, but it's pretty darn important. Otherwise, you'll walk off into the swamp with the alligators. You really will.
First and foremost, I'd tell them keep your word. You know, your word is your bond. If you commit to somebody on how you're going to vote on a particular issue, make sure that you stay with that commitment. That's first and foremost. You lose a lot of credibility if you tell somebody, one thing and then do something altogether different. Number two, don't expect too much too quickly. I think I'm pretty strong evidence for that. I've been around for 36 years, and things don't move quite as quick as you'd like them to. We've got a lot of new people who are going to come in with a lot of, big ideas, and they need to expect that this process will not move as quickly as they would like it to. And number three, do your homework. I mean, be sure that you know the issues, that you know where you're going to stand on the issues. And I've always said that your constituents, while they may not agree with you, if they know where you stand and you don't hide that, from them, will at least respect you. And I think that's probably the most important bit of advice, is make sure that your constituents know exactly where you stand, and don't lie to your constituents.